woman cleans out her deceased father's barn, and what she finds under the hay changes her life. Emily Thompson was determined to get it over with once and for all, even though her heart tightened with every step she took in the barn that had been abandoned for almost a year. The 15-hectare farm in Greendale, upstate New York, needed to be sold as soon as possible to pay off the debts her father had left, and she could no longer postpone cleaning out that place, which had always been old Robert Thompson's favorite refuge. It was while moving the first pile of yellowed hay that her hands trembled upon feeling something hard beneath the dry straw. A rusty metal box appeared, as if it had been purposely hidden there. When she opened it, she found letters yellowed with time, photographs and documents that made her world collapse. There was the proof that everything she believed about her family was a carefully constructed lie. The letters were from a woman named Susan, dated over 20 years ago, begging to see her daughter. Emily read with her heart racing, trying to understand why those letters were hidden in her father's barn. The shaky handwriting spoke of longing, regret, and a forced separation that had never been explained. But what shook her the most was realizing that the letters referred to her. She had always known that her mother had left when she was just 6 years old. Her father had told her that she couldn't handle life in the countryside and had gone off to the big city, abandoning her husband and daughter to live a more modern life. All these years, Emily had grown up believing she wasn't loved enough for her mother to stay. Now at 45, she discovered that Susan Thompson had never voluntarily abandoned the family. The letters revealed a completely different story. She had been thrown out of the house by her own husband, who had discovered something about her past that he considered unacceptable. Robert Thompson had forbidden any contact between mother and daughter, threatening consequences if Susan tried to get close. Emily sat on the wooden floor of the barn, still wearing the yellow blouse she had put on for the cleaning work, and kept reading. There were addresses in the letters, old phone numbers, desperate attempts at communication that had all been intercepted by her father. Susan had been living in Chicago, just 2 hours away, all these years. One of the more recent letters, from 5 years ago, mentioned that Susan worked as a seamstress in a downtown studio. Emily looked at her own trembling hands and realized she had inherited the same skill with needle and thread that she had always shown since childhood. Her father used to say it was a natural talent, but now she understood it was a maternal inheritance. Among the photographs, she found pictures of herself as a child that she didn't even know existed. Photos of birthdays, outings, family moments she didn't remember living. In all of them, Susan appeared smiling beside her, a brunette woman with large eyes and delicate hands. Her father had completely erased her mother's presence from her memory, as if she had never existed. There was also a diary with notes from Susan herself. The pages told of the failed attempts at contact, the sleepless nights thinking about her daughter, the forgotten birthdays because she couldn't celebrate together. Emily discovered that her mother had never remarried, living alone in the hope of one day being able to explain what really happened. What shocked her the most was finding copies of legal documents. Susan had tried to seek legal help to get the right to see her daughter, but Robert Thompson had influence in the small town and managed to block any legal proceedings. The lawyers always dropped the case after a few weeks, citing lack of evidence or technical problems. Emily wiped away the tears that had started to fall and continued investigating the box. She found older letters from when her parents were still married. In them, she discovered that Susan had been a beloved woman in the community, known for helping needy families and for her generosity. What could have happened to make everything change so drastically? The answer came in a letter kept at the bottom of the box. Susan confessed to her husband that she had been married before moving to Greendale. The first marriage had been a youthful mistake, and she fled from an abusive man who mistreated her. When she arrived in town, she decided not to talk about her past, to start a new life. Robert Thompson discovered the truth 5 years after their marriage, when Susan's first husband showed up in town looking for her. He couldn't accept having been deceived and considered his wife a liar who had tarnished the family's honor. From that moment on, he began planning how to get rid of her without causing a scandal in the community. Emily understood that her father orchestrated a silent campaign to make Susan appear to be a bad mother and wife. He spread rumors about her behavior, suggested she was interested in other men, created embarrassing situations in public. When he finally kicked her out of the house, the community was already convinced that she was a woman of questionable character. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The discovery made Emily question everything she thought she knew about her father. Robert Thompson had always been seen as an honorable man in the community, hard-working and dedicated to his daughter. But the truth revealed a cruel and calculating side that she never imagined existed. He had destroyed an entire family to protect his own pride. That same afternoon, Emily drove to Chicago with her heart pounding. The address from the letters still existed, a simple house in a working-class neighborhood of the city. When she rang the doorbell, a woman with graying hair answered the door. The aged face still held familiar features that made Emily immediately recognize who was standing before her. Susan took a few seconds to process the sight. When she finally understood who the woman at her door was, she began to cry, unable to speak. Emily also couldn't utter a word, just threw herself into the arms of the mother she thought she had lost forever. The two stood embraced in the doorway, crying over years of pent-up longing. When they finally entered the house, Susan showed what she had kept all these years. An entire room dedicated to her daughter, with birthday gifts bought religiously, clothes in every size Emily might have worn, imaginary photographs that could never be taken. It was a sanctuary of maternal love that withstood time and forced separation. Susan told her version of the story through tears. She explained about the abusive first marriage, about the fear that made her lie to Robert, about the years trying to regain her husband's trust. She told about the night she was thrown out of the house without even being able to say goodbye to her daughter, taking only the clothes on her back and the certainty that she would do anything to see her again. For years, Susan worked in simple jobs to support herself, always saving money in the hope of being able to afford a better lawyer or find a way around the blockade Robert Thompson had created. She occasionally hired private detectives to find out how Emily was doing, if she had gotten married, if she was happy. She knew about her daughter's engagement, about her work as a nurse at the local hospital, about every important moment she had missed. Emily discovered that Susan never stopped fighting for the chance to explain the truth. She wrote hundreds of letters that were never delivered, tried to make contact through mutual acquaintances, and even went to the school where Emily Thompson studied to see her from afar during graduations. Robert Thompson always discovered the attempts and increased surveillance, even changing Emily's school when necessary. What hurt Emily the most was learning that Susan had fallen ill several times over the years, facing severe depression and health problems caused by the stress of separation. During one hospitalization, she almost gave up on living, but the hope of reuniting with her daughter always made her persevere. She kept newspaper clippings with Emily's name, celebrating every small professional achievement, as if it were a personal victory. Susan also revealed that she learned of Robert Thompson's terminal illness months before he passed away. She went to the hospital where he was admitted, but he refused to see her. He sent a message through a nurse saying he would rather take the secrets to the grave than admit the mistake he had made. It was the last opportunity for reconciliation, lost forever. In the following days, mother and daughter spent hours talking, trying to recover decades of lost time together. Susan showed cooking skills that Emily didn't know she had, preparing dishes that awakened dormant memories from early childhood. The smell of certain foods brought back fragmented recollections of a time she thought she had imagined. Emily took Susan back to the farm in Greendale. When the mother saw the property again after so many years, she couldn't contain her emotion. She showed where she used to plant the garden, where she raised the chickens, where she sat to sew while Emily played in the yard. Every corner of the house awakened a memory that had been artificially erased. In the barn where it all began, Susan explained that she always knew where Robert kept important things. She suspected he had hidden the letters somewhere on the property, but never imagined it would be in the place where they used to store hay for the animals. It was an irony of fate that Emily found the evidence precisely while cleaning the barn to sell the farm. Susan then revealed another secret that changed Emily's perspective on the family once again. Robert Thompson was not her biological father. Susan discovered she was pregnant by another man shortly before getting married, but Robert accepted the child as his own, genuinely loving Emily from birth. The betrayal he could never forgive was not just the lie about the first marriage, but also the discovery that the daughter he had raised as his own was not his by blood. The revelation was an additional shock, but also explained many of her father's strange behaviors over the years. Emily remembered seemingly innocent comments about not inheriting certain traits from him, about being different from the paternal relatives, about having talents that no one in the Thompson family displayed. Everything began to make sense. Susan shared that Emily's biological father was from a brief relationship during the period when she had fled her first husband. He was a married man who didn't want to take responsibility when he learned of the pregnancy. Susan decided to raise her daughter alone, but when she met Robert Thompson and fell in love, she saw an opportunity to give the child a complete family. For years, Robert was a genuinely loving father. He treated Emily as his true daughter, took pride in her achievements, and protected her from any trouble. But when he discovered the truth about her parentage, something broke inside him. He could no longer look at Susan without feeling anger, nor at Emily without being reminded of the betrayal. Susan explained that she tried to save the marriage by admitting her mistakes and asking for forgiveness, but Robert had already decided he could no longer live with that pretense. He didn't have the courage to leave Emily because he genuinely loved her, but couldn't forgive Susan for deceiving him about something so fundamental. The solution he found was to banish his wife and raise their daughter alone, rewriting history to protect his own dignity. Emily finally understood why her father had always been so protective, sometimes even suffocating. He was afraid she would discover the truth about the family and abandon him too. Every relationship she tried to build was seen as a threat. Every new friendship sparked jealousy. Every professional achievement that took her away from the farm generated anxiety. Emily's current engagement to Michael, an engineer from New York, also gained new perspective. Her father had always shown resistance to the relationship, claiming that men from big cities couldn't adapt to life upstate. Now she understood that Robert feared losing his daughter to someone who might take her even further from the truth about the family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Michael had been pressuring Emily for months to sell the property and move to New York after the wedding. He didn't understand her emotional attachment to the farm and considered rural life a limitation for the professional plans they had together. The discovery about her family completely changed Emily's perspective on these pressures. When she told Michael about reuniting with her mother, he seemed more irritated than understanding. He claimed those past revelations would only complicate their lives and that it would be better to forget everything and move forward. The fiancé's cold reaction made Emily realize he wasn't interested in her emotional needs, only in fitting her into the plans he had made for both of them. Susan, upon meeting Michael during a visit to the farm, immediately noticed concerning signs in his behavior. Her experience with her first abusive husband had taught her to identify controlling men. Michael showed impatience when Emily made decisions without consulting him, made derogatory comments about the life she had chosen in the countryside, tried to isolate her from the few friendships she had in the region. The mother shared these observations delicately, without wanting to interfere directly in her daughter's choices. She explained that it took her years to recognize the signs of control in her own relationships, and that she would like to spare Emily from making the same mistakes. The conversations made the daughter rethink many attitudes she had normalized in the engagement. Emily began to notice behaviors in Michael that had previously gone unnoticed. He constantly checked her phone, questioned every outing alone, showed excessive jealousy of co-workers, subtly criticized the clothes she chose. What she had previously interpreted as care and interest, she now recognized as attempts at control. The pressure to sell the farm also gained new perspective. Michael insisted that the rural property was a bad investment, that they needed the money to buy a better apartment in New York, that the distance from the city would harm both their careers. Emily realized he was trying to cut her off from any connection to her past and family. During a heated argument about the future, Michael revealed his true opinion about Susan. He considered the story of the family separation unnecessary drama and believed Emily was being emotionally manipulated by her mother. He suggested that Susan had abandoned the family back then and was now returning only interested in the inheritance Emily might receive. The accusation left Emily furious. Michael didn't know Susan well enough to make judgments about her character, nor had he made an effort to understand the suffering she had endured during all those years of separation. His defensive reaction when questioned about these opinions showed an intolerant side she hadn't known. Emily began to question whether she truly knew the man she planned to marry. Michael had always been charming and attentive during their courtship, but after the engagement, he began to display more possessive behaviors. She had attributed the change to his work stress, but now suspected it was his true personality, emerging as he felt more secure in the relationship. The discovery of the box in the barn didn't just bring her mother back into her life, but also clarity about other important relationships. Emily realized she had repeated family patterns without noticing, accepting a partner who tried to control her life in the same way her father had controlled her mother. The difference was that now she had the knowledge to make different decisions. Susan supported her daughter when she decided to postpone the wedding to rethink the relationship. The mother didn't try to influence the decision, only offered the emotional support Emily needed to find the courage to question a future that already seemed determined. For the first time in decades, she had someone in the family who encouraged her to follow her own instincts. Michael didn't take the postponement well. He claimed Emily was being negatively influenced by her mother and demanded she choose between the relationship with him and spending time with Susan. The ultimatum confirmed all suspicions about his controlling character and made the decision to end the engagement permanently easier. The breakup was painful, but also liberating. Emily realized she had spent months trying to fit into Michael's plans, setting aside her own desires and needs. Without the pressure of the relationship, she could finally process all the discoveries about her family and decide what she truly wanted for the future. With Susan by her side, Emily began to explore parts of the property she had neglected for years. The mother showed special little corners only she knew about, explained about plants she had cultivated, told stories about the life they had together before the forced separation. The farm gained new meanings that had nothing to do with sales or profit. Susan suggested that instead of selling the property, they could try to restore it together. The mother had experience in sewing and could teach the craft to women in the region, creating a sustainable source of income that didn't depend solely on agriculture. Emily, with her healthcare experience, could complement the project by offering first aid and basic care courses. The idea excited Emily in a way she hadn't felt in years. She had chosen nursing out of a genuine calling to help people, but the hospital work had become mechanical over time. The possibility of using her skills to benefit the rural community where she grew up brought back her enthusiasm for the profession. They started small, offering basic sewing courses in the main house's living room. Susan had a natural teaching ability and soon attracted women of various ages interested in learning the craft. Emily used breaks to give guidance on preventive health, creating a cooperative learning environment that benefited the entire community. The project grew organically. Women who learned sewing brought interested friends. Mothers brought daughters to learn a useful craft. Grandmothers shared old techniques that were being lost. What started as a way to use the property transformed into an informal community center that served various local needs. Emily discovered teaching talents she didn't know she possessed. Explaining basic medical procedures to people without formal education challenged her to develop more didactic and accessible methods. The positive feedback from students and gratitude for knowledge that could save lives brought a professional satisfaction she had never experienced at the hospital. Susan blossomed while teaching sewing after decades of working just to survive. Seeing her daughter by her side, building something positive together, healed emotional wounds that seemed impossible to mend. She regained the joy of living that she had lost during the years of forced separation, finding purpose in passing knowledge to other women. The two discovered they had much more in common than just blood ties. Both valued manual work, had patience for teaching, felt satisfaction in helping others, and preferred simple living over showing off. The similarities that time and separation couldn't erase grew stronger with daily coexistence. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. The local community welcomed Susan's return well, especially after the elders remembered the generous woman she had been before the separation. Many acknowledged they had been unfair in judging the situation based only on Robert Thompson's version, and some even apologized for how they had treated her in the past. Mrs. Caroline, the closest neighbor to the property, was one of the first to approach Susan to apologize. She admitted she had always had doubts about the official version of the separation, as she knew Robert Thompson's proud temperament. The reconciliation with neighbors brought back the sense of community that the family had lost. The success of the sewing project attracted attention from the local city hall. The social services secretary visited the property to learn about the work being developed and offered official support to expand the activities. Emily and Susan were surprised by the recognition, as they hadn't expected such a simple project to gain institutional dimension. With the City Hall's support, they obtained better equipment for sewing classes and materials for first aid courses. The official partnership also brought more credibility to the project, attracting women from neighboring towns interested in participating in the activities. What was local began to have regional impact. Emily decided to take leave from her hospital job to dedicate herself fully to the project. The decision worried some acquaintances who considered it irresponsible to abandon a stable job for something uncertain, but she was convinced she had found her true calling. The experience of seeing women transform their lives through the knowledge they received was more rewarding than any salary. Susan suggested they formalize the project by creating a non-governmental organization. The idea seemed complex at first, but with help from a city lawyer who offered to assist free of charge, they managed to regularize all legal matters. The NGO Hands That Teach was born as a natural extension of the work they were already developing. The organization's name had a double meaning that moved both mother and daughter. It represented the practical aspect of manual teaching, but also symbolized the hands that had reunited after so many years apart. It was a way of transforming pain into hope, loss into growth, separation into union that benefited others. The first official class of the NGO graduated 15 women in basic sewing and 10 in first aid. The graduation ceremony was held in the main house's courtyard, with family members and local authorities in attendance. Seeing the pride of the students receiving certificates for the knowledge they acquired deeply moved Emily and Susan. One of the most dedicated students was Gladys, a 60-year-old widow who had recently lost her husband and needed to find a way to support herself. She showed a natural talent for sewing and soon began receiving clothing orders from the neighborhood. Her success inspired other women in similar situations to seek out the NGO's courses. Gladys became a kind of spokesperson for the project in the community. She told all her acquaintances how the course had changed her life, offering not only technical knowledge, but also emotional support during a difficult period. Her testimony brought credibility to the work that Emily and Susan were developing. The project began attracting attention from journalists interested in positive stories about community development. A local news story about the NGO highlighted both the educational aspect and the family history behind the initiative. The coverage brought regional recognition and new supporters interested in contributing to the work. With the NGO's growth came the need to expand the physical space. The barn where Emily found the box with the letters was renovated and transformed into the main classroom. The irony of using that place, which had held family secrets for so long, to teach and share knowledge, brought a sense of completion to mother and daughter. During the barn renovation, they found more personal items hidden by Robert Thompson. There were his diaries revealing the internal conflict he had lived through for years, admitting that he missed Susan, but that his wounded pride wouldn't allow forgiveness. The notes showed a man tormented by his own stubbornness, regretful but unable to back down. Reading her father's intimate thoughts brought a more complex understanding of his personality to Emily. She realized that Robert Thompson wasn't just a cruel man who separated a family, but also a victim of his own prejudices and the social rigidity of the time. Forgiveness became possible when she understood that he had also suffered from his own decisions. Susan had more difficulty forgiving, as she was the one who paid the highest price for her husband's stubbornness. But gradually, with her daughter's support and therapy with a psychologist they met through the NGO, she managed to process the anger and find peace with the past. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting the pain, but rather freeing herself from the burden of resentment. The story of the family separation became an educational tool that Emily and Susan used in the NGO's courses. They talked about the damage family secrets can cause and encouraged participants to maintain open communication in their own families. Many women identified with aspects of the story and shared similar experiences. 1 year after discovering the box in the barn, the NGO Hands That Teach had already trained over 100 women in different courses. The project expanded to include adult literacy classes, medicinal plant workshops, and women's rights workshops. The property transformed into a reference center for community education in the region. Emily realized she had found her true life's mission. The hospital work, although important, never brought her the satisfaction she felt, seeing women transform their realities through knowledge. She discovered that her vocation wasn't just caring for the sick, but preventing problems through education. Susan, at 68 years old, experienced an energy she hadn't felt in decades. Having her daughter back and being able to positively contribute to the community brought a sense of completeness she thought impossible. She became a respected figure in the region, known for her wisdom and generosity in teaching her skills. The relationship between mother and daughter grew stronger through their joint work. They developed a professional partnership that perfectly complemented their personal reconnection. Emily admired the resilience and dignity Susan had shown during the difficult years, while Susan took pride in her daughter's courage to leave a secure life behind in search of greater purpose. Their weekends at the property became special moments for family bonding. They cooked together using recipes Susan kept in her memory, discussed future plans for the NGO, and tended to the garden that had been replanted just as it was when Emily was a child. It was as if they were making up for lost time through simple yet meaningful rituals. Michael attempted to reach out a few times after the engagement ended, claiming he had reflected on his mistakes and wanted another chance. Emily realized he was mainly interested in the success the NGO was beginning to achieve, seeing opportunities to associate himself with something positive. The reconciliation attempt only confirmed she had made the right decision in ending the relationship. The experience with Michael served as a lesson about the importance of truly knowing someone before making important decisions about the future. Emily developed stricter criteria for relationships, prioritizing partners who respected her autonomy and supported her personal projects. The emotional maturity gained through her family discoveries influenced every area of her life. The local community began to take pride in the NGO as a positive symbol of the region. Municipal authorities started citing the project in speeches about social development, and other cities sent delegations to learn about the methodology developed by Emily and Susan. The recognition brought opportunities to expand their work to new municipalities. One of the most significant achievements was securing a partnership with regional universities to offer certified technical courses. NGO students who showed special aptitude could continue their studies in more advanced programs, creating a bridge between community education and formal education. The possibility of academic progression motivated even more women to participate in the courses. Gladys became the first NGO student to enroll in a fashion technical course at a partner university. Her story of overcoming adversity, moving from destitute widowhood to becoming a recognized entrepreneur, inspired other women in the region to believe in their own capabilities. She regularly returned to the NGO to share knowledge gained at the university. The renovated barn became a symbol of transformation for the entire community. The place that held secrets and pain for decades was now a space for learning and hope. Emily placed a sign at the entrance explaining the history of the place, turning the personal discovery into a lesson about the importance of truth and forgiveness in family relationships. Twice a year, the NGO organized a community festival to celebrate student achievements and raise funds for new projects. The event took place in the property's courtyard, featuring exhibitions of sewing work, first aid demonstrations, and lectures on women's empowerment. The festival became an eagerly anticipated tradition throughout the region. During the second festival, Emily met Dr. David, a veterinarian who had recently moved to the area to work with sustainable agriculture. He showed genuine interest in the NGO's work and offered courses on pet care that would complement the organization's educational program. The professional collaboration gradually evolved into mutual personal interest. David demonstrated all the qualities that Michael had lacked. He respected Emily's autonomy, enthusiastically supported the NGO's work, treated Susan with affection and consideration, and showed genuine interest in the family's personal stories. The relationship developed naturally, without pressures or attempts at control. Susan completely approved of her daughter's new relationship. She noticed that David brought genuine joy to Emily and contributed positively to the family's projects. The painful experience with her first abusive husband had taught Susan to recognize men who respect and value the women in their lives. The professional partnership with David brought a new dimension to the NGO's courses. Classes on pet care attracted entire families, including children who were interested in the playful aspects of learning. The project began to benefit the entire family structure of the community, not just the women individually. 3 years after finding the box in the barn, Emily reflected on all the changes that a simple discovery had brought about in her life. She had lost an unsuitable fiancé, but gained a loving mother. She had left a secure job, but found a true vocation. She had questioned her entire family history, but built a new narrative based on truth and forgiveness. Susan, in turn, had regained not only her lost daughter, but also the sense of purpose she thought she had lost forever. At 71 years old, she felt more useful and fulfilled than at any other time in her adult life. The pain of forced separation had transformed into wisdom that benefited dozens of other women. The NGO, Hands That Teach, had become a regional reference in community education. The project had trained over 300 women in different skills, created income opportunities for dozens of families, and established a mutual support network that strengthened the entire community. What began as a consequence of a personal discovery had turned into a lasting social legacy. The rural property that was almost sold due to financial need now generated sustainable income through the NGO's activities. Partnerships with local companies, government support, and private donations ensured sufficient resources to maintain and expand the projects. The farm had become self-sustaining through social purpose rather than traditional agriculture. Emily and David married in a simple ceremony held in the property's courtyard, with Susan symbolically officiating the union. The celebration was open to the entire community, including the NGO's students, who considered the family part of their own stories of overcoming. It was a party that celebrated not only the love between two people, but the union of an entire community around positive values. The couple decided to live in the main house on the property, keeping Susan in a comfortable annex that was built especially for her. The coexistence of 3 different generations enriched the family dynamics and brought diverse perspectives to decisions about the NGO's projects. David contributed technical knowledge about rural management, while Susan offered wisdom accumulated through decades of life experience. During their honeymoon, which was a simple trip to learn about other successful NGOs in the country, Emily and David brought back new ideas to implement in the organization. They visited similar projects in different regions and established a network of contacts that would allow for exchanges of experiences and methodologies between organizations with similar goals. One of the most important innovations was the creation of a mentorship program, where graduates of the NGO's courses became responsible for teaching new classes. Gladys was one of the first mentors, passing on not just technical sewing skills, but also her personal journey of overcoming challenges and rebuilding her life. The mentorship program created a positive cycle where knowledge and experience were continuously multiplied. Each mentor developed leadership and communication abilities that benefited their own lives, while new students received inspiration through real-life examples of personal transformation. The methodology proved so effective that other NGOs in the region began implementing similar systems. Susan became the general coordinator of the mentorship program, a role that allowed her to use decades of life experience to guide women at different stages of personal development. She showed a special intuition for identifying each student's specific needs and connecting them with mentors who had faced similar challenges. The fifth sewing class included Mary Grace, a 55-year-old woman who had spent her whole life caring for her family without ever learning a profession. After her children left home, she felt lost and without purpose. The NGO's course not only taught her a technical skill, but also restored her self-esteem and sense of personal worth. Mary Grace specialized in artistic embroidery, a technique Susan mastered but that was being lost in the region. Together, they created a line of handmade products that began selling at regional fairs and tourist shops. The commercial success of the embroidery brought additional recognition to the NGO and demonstrated the economic potential of traditional knowledge. The diversification of the NGO's activities also included regional cooking classes taught by Mrs. Caroline and other neighbors who were experts in traditional recipes. The goal was to preserve culinary knowledge at risk of being lost through generations, while creating opportunities for women interested in food entrepreneurship. The cooking classes attracted participants with different backgrounds than the NGO's other projects. Young women interested in reviving family traditions joined grandmothers wanting to formalize knowledge they had always shared informally. The intergenerational exchange brought additional richness to the educational activities. One cooking student, Jennifer, was only 22 and had returned to the region after graduating with a business degree in New York. She realized she could use her college knowledge to help other women formalize small businesses based on skills learned at the NGO. Her contribution brought additional professionalization to entrepreneurial activities. With Jennifer's help, the NGO created a women-led micro-enterprise incubation program. The project offered not only technical training in different areas, but also guidance on legal, financial, and marketing aspects needed to establish sustainable businesses. The initiative transformed the organization into a comprehensive women's empowerment center. David contributed to the incubation program by sharing knowledge about cooperatives and family farming. He helped several NGO students develop small-scale organic production projects, creating a network of local suppliers that served both regional markets and specialty organic ingredient restaurants. The network of micro-enterprises incubated by the NGO began generating significant economic impact in the region. Women who previously depended solely on family income started contributing financially to household budgets, with some even becoming their family's primary providers. The economic independence brought empowerment that positively influenced all aspects of their lives. The project's success drew attention from regional development agencies. The NGO received invitations to participate in funding opportunities that would allow for significant expansion of activities. Emily and Susan found themselves facing the opportunity to transform a local initiative into a replicable model for other regions of the country. The possibility of expansion brought important reflections about the organization's future direction. Mother and daughter debated at length whether they should maintain the familial and community character that defined the project or embrace growth that could benefit a much larger number of women. The decision required balancing social ambition with preservation of the NGO's core values. After consulting with the mentors and senior students, they decided to accept expansion in a gradual and controlled manner. The growth would be based on a replication methodology, where interested communities would receive training to implement adapted versions of the project in their own regions. This way, the impact would increase without losing the characteristic of local community development. The first replication of the Hands That Teach NGO was implemented in Riverside, in the Hudson Valley, a region with socio-economic characteristics similar to Greendale. Emily and Susan traveled there for 3 months to train the local team and adapt the methodology to the community's specific needs. The experience was challenging but extremely rewarding. The successful replication validated the methodology developed by mother and daughter and paved the way for additional expansions. 5 other cities expressed interest in implementing adapted versions of the project, creating a regional network of NGOs with similar objectives. The prospect of impacting thousands of women through a model born from the family's personal pain deeply moved Emily and Susan. 5 years after finding the box in the barn, Emily organized a special celebration to mark the anniversary of the discovery that changed their lives. The event brought together all the people who had been positively touched by the NGO's work: students, mentors, partners, supporters, and family members of women benefited by the projects. During the celebration, Emily gave an emotional speech about how a painful discovery could be transformed into strength for good. She retold the story of the family separation, the reunion with her mother, the difficulties overcome, and the achievements reached. The account inspired many present to reflect on their own family stories and possibilities for personal transformation. Susan also spoke at the celebration, sharing her perspective on the years of separation and the family reconstruction process. She emphasized that the suffering, though painful, had developed in her the empathy and wisdom necessary to help other women in difficult situations. Her speech particularly moved the older students, who identified with her story of resilience and overcoming. David presented data about the NGO's social impact during its 5 years of operation. More than 500 women had been directly benefited by the courses, 73 micro-businesses had been incubated, 16 mentors were active in the Knowledge Multiplication Program, and 6 project replications were functioning in other cities. The numbers impressed even those who had followed the organization's gradual growth. Gladys, now graduated as a fashion technician and owner of a thriving atelier, represented all the students in a testimony about how the NGO had transformed their lives. She spoke about the importance of having found not only technical knowledge, but also a support community that encouraged her to believe in her own capabilities. Her professional success was a constant inspiration for new students. Mary Grace presented an exhibition of artistic embroideries produced by students specialized in the technique. The pieces demonstrated not only technical skill, but also creativity and regional cultural identity. Several of the embroideries had been sold to folk art collectors, generating significant income for their producers and artistic recognition for the region. Jennifer, who had become the coordinator of the Business Incubation Program, presented the financial results of the businesses supported by the NGO. The success rate of the enterprises exceeded national averages for micro-enterprises, demonstrating that the combination of technical training with community support created favorable conditions for female entrepreneurship. During the celebration, the creation of the Hands That Teach Institute was announced, an evolution of the NGO that would allow it to operate on an even larger scale. The institute would maintain all local activities, but would also develop research on women's empowerment methodologies and offer consulting services to organizations interested in implementing similar projects. The creation of the institute represented the institutional recognition of the work developed by Emily and Susan. Universities expressed interest in studying the methodology as a successful case in community development, and government agencies began citing the project as a model for public policies on women's empowerment. Emily was invited to speak about the NGO's experience at academic conferences and social development events. She discovered she had a natural talent for public speaking, moving audiences with her personal story while presenting technical data on social impact. The lectures brought national visibility to the work developed in Greendale. Susan, at 73 years old, became a respected figure in the rural women's empowerment movement. Her story of resilience during decades of forced separation inspired women of all ages facing difficult situations. She received invitations to participate in events in other regions, always accompanied by Emily on trips that further strengthened the partnership between mother and daughter. The barn where it all began was transformed into a memorial that told the story of the family and the NGO. Visitors could learn the details of the discovery of the box, see photographs of the project's evolution, and understand how personal pain can be transformed into collective benefit. The memorial became a must-visit spot for delegations coming to learn about the organization's work. The original box found in the barn was preserved as a symbol of the family transformation. It was displayed in the memorial with an explanation of its contents and historical significance. Many visitors were moved to learn that letters of maternal love, kept for decades, had been the starting point for a project that had benefited hundreds of women. David and Emily had their first child, Robert Susan Thompson Wilson, whose name honored both his paternal grandfather and maternal grandmother. The child would grow up knowing the entire family history, including the difficult moments that preceded his arrival. The couple decided that transparency and honesty would be fundamental values in their son's education. Susan proved to be a dedicated and loving grandmother, making up with her grandson for the lost time with her daughter during childhood. She sewed special little clothes for the child, told family stories, and taught old songs she had learned from her own mother. The interaction between generations brought additional richness to the family dynamics. Robert's birth further strengthened family bonds and brought renewed perspectives on the continuity of the social work. Emily and David planned to educate their son with awareness of social responsibility and community values. The child would grow up seeing the practical example of how dedicating oneself to the common good can bring personal fulfillment. The 10th sewing class of the NGO included Gladys's daughter, an 18-year-old young woman who wanted to learn her mother's craft before going to university. The participation of a second generation in the project symbolized the consolidation of the organization as a lasting institution in the community. Knowledge was being passed down from mothers to daughters within the very group of beneficiaries. The mentorship program evolved to include intergenerational mentorships, where older women shared life experiences with young women facing important decisions about their professional and personal futures. The exchange of perspectives between generations enriched both mentors and apprentices, creating a support network that transcended age differences. One of the most significant achievements was enabling 3 students from the NGO to enroll in public universities through higher education access programs. They were studying business administration, education, and social work with the goal of returning to the region to contribute to community development projects. The prospect of training professionals committed to local development brought hope for the continuity of the organization's work. Emily Thompson began writing a book about the experience of discovering the family truth and transforming pain into social purpose. The editorial project aimed to inspire other people facing difficult family situations, showing that painful revelations can be starting points for positive transformations. Several publishers expressed interest in publishing the work. Susan collaborated on the book by sharing her perspective on the years of separation and the family reconstruction process. Her contribution brought emotional depth to the narrative and offered valuable insights into female resilience in adverse situations. Her account of how she maintained hope during decades of forced separation inspired anyone facing seemingly insurmountable difficulties. The book also included testimonials from NGO students about how the project had impacted their lives. Gladys wrote about the transformation from dependent widow to successful entrepreneur. Mary Grace reported discovering artistic talents she thought she didn't possess. Jennifer told how she found professional purpose by helping other women become entrepreneurs. Each story demonstrated different forms of female empowerment. The publication of the book brought national recognition to the NGO's work. Emily Thompson was invited to television programs, radio interviews, and lectures in major urban centers. The media exposure significantly increased donations to the organization and attracted qualified volunteers interested in contributing to the projects. Susan was initially uncomfortable with the public exposure, having spent decades trying to rebuild a reserved life after the traumatic separation. But she gradually realized that sharing her story could help other women in similar situations and began accepting invitations to events where her experience could be useful. The 7th replica of the NGO was implemented in the Amazon region, adapting the methodology to local cultural and geographical specificities. The challenge of working with riverside communities required creativity to overcome logistical difficulties, but also brought valuable learnings about Brazilian regional diversity. The Amazon experience enriched the original methodology with new knowledge. David developed a complementary sustainable agriculture project that served families of the NGO students. The goal was to create a local production chain that would supply organic food to the region while generating additional income for families benefiting from the courses. The integration between women's empowerment and sustainable rural development created a more comprehensive model of community transformation. The Sustainable Agriculture Project attracted support from environmental organizations interested in promoting ecologically sound production practices. The partnership brought financial resources and technical knowledge that allowed expanding agricultural activities to other properties in the region. Several families abandoned pesticide use and began producing certified organic food. The 12th First Aid class formed the region's first community emergency response team. The most dedicated students received additional training and basic equipment to handle urgent situations while awaiting specialized help. The initiative significantly reduced response times for medical emergencies in the rural area. One of the emergency team graduates, Josephine, 48 years old, saved a neighbor's life when he suffered a heart attack while working in the field. Her first aid knowledge allowed her to stabilize the patient until the ambulance arrived. The case gained regional attention and demonstrated the practical value of the NGO's courses. Josephine's story inspired other women to become interested in first aid courses. Demand increased so much that additional classes had to be created and new instructors trained. Emily developed a training program for multipliers that allowed expanding preventive health courses to other communities in the region. The 10th anniversary of the box discovery was celebrated with a large event that gathered over 1,000 people in the property's courtyard. The celebration included exhibitions of work produced by students, cultural presentations, lectures on women's empowerment, and tributes to people who contributed to the NGO's success over the years. During the 10-year celebration, the creation of a permanent foundation was announced to ensure continuity of the social work developed by the family. The foundation received significant donations from business people and organizations that recognized the project's value for regional development. The resources would guarantee financial sustainability for activities for at least 20 years. Emily, now 55 years old, reflected on the extraordinary journey her life had taken after the discovery in the barn. She transitioned from hospital nurse to recognized leader in women's empowerment, from motherless orphan daughter to partner in a transformative social project, from submissive fiancée to wife in a relationship based on equality and mutual respect. Susan, at 78 years old, remained active and enthusiastic about the Foundation's projects. Her story of resilience and overcoming continued to inspire women of all ages who participated in the activities. She had become a maternal figure to hundreds of students who found in the NGO not only technical knowledge, but also emotional support to face their own difficulties. David established himself as a specialist in sustainable rural development, being invited for consultations on similar projects across the country. His work perfectly complemented the Foundation's activities, creating an integrated model of community transformation that addressed both social and environmental needs. The professional partnership constantly strengthened his personal relationship with Emily. Robert, now 5 years old, grew up immersed in the environment of solidarity and cooperation created by the Foundation. The child already showed interest in social activities and often accompanied their parents on visits to the NGO's replicas in other cities. Their education was being based on values of social responsibility and commitment to community development. The 15th replica of the NGO was implemented in a Maroon community in Louisiana, adapting the methodology to value specific ancestral knowledge of African American culture. The project included workshops on traditional crafts, courses about medicinal plants from the local biome, and training for marketing cultural products. The experience in the Northeast brought new perspectives on American cultural diversity. The Business Incubation Program had already supported over 200 women-led enterprises. The success rate remained above national averages, demonstrating that the methodology developed by the Foundation truly created favorable conditions for female entrepreneurship. Several incubated businesses became suppliers to major retail chains, generating significant regional economic impact. One of the most successful businesses was the embroidery cooperative led by Mary Grace. The group produced artistic pieces that were sold throughout the country through digital platforms. The cooperative's annual revenue exceeded $300,000, distributed among 15 artisans who had discovered in embroidery a dignified and sustainable source of income. Gladys expanded her atelier and began offering private haute couture courses for clients from New York who traveled specifically to learn traditional techniques. Her story of overcoming adversity became part of the region's tourist appeal, demonstrating how local knowledge can generate innovative economic opportunities. She became an example of successful rural entrepreneurship. Jennifer completed postgraduate studies in regional development and took over the general coordination of the NGO's replicas in other cities. Her experience combining academic knowledge with community practice made her an ideal bridge between theory and application. She constantly developed improvements to the methodology based on results observed in different implementations. The 20th sewing class included women from 3 generations of the same family, grandmother, mother, and daughter who decided to learn together. This case symbolized how the NGO had become completely integrated into the local culture, becoming part of the region's family traditions. Technical knowledge blended with strengthening family bonds in a rich and complex educational process. Emily was recognized as Personality of the Year in Social Development by the state government. The award highlighted not only the foundation's results, but also the innovative methodology that combined family conflict resolution with community transformation. The official recognition validated years of dedicated work and opened doors for even greater expansion of activities. Susan received special honors during the award ceremony, being recognized as an example of female resilience and personal triumph. Her journey from being a woman expelled from home to becoming a respected community leader inspired authorities and social professionals. The official recognition brought historical justice for decades of unjust suffering. Emily's book became a bestseller in the personal development category, selling over 100,000 copies in 2 years. The royalties were fully donated to the foundation, ensuring additional resources for expanding activities. The publishing success also generated invitations for international lectures on women's empowerment and community development. The translation of the book into other languages brought the NGO's methodology to international organizations interested in replicating the model in other countries. Delegations from African and Latin American organizations visited Greendale to see firsthand how the projects operated. The international interest validated the quality and relevance of the work being done. The memorial in the barn was expanded to include a video room where visitors could watch documentaries about the family's history and the evolution of the NGO. Recorded testimonials from students, mentors, and partners complemented the permanent exhibition. The space became a reference center for researchers interested in studying women's empowerment methodologies. The box that Emily found in the barn 15 years earlier remained on display as the memorial's central symbol. An explanatory plaque detailed the story of the discovery and its transformative consequences. Thousands of visitors each year were moved to learn how old letters could generate such significant social impact. Robert, now 10 years old, began showing interest in following his parents' footsteps in social work. He regularly participated in the foundation's activities as a junior volunteer, helping organize events and interacting with the students. His practical education in social responsibility complemented his formal schooling and developed his sense of citizenship from an early age. The foundation launched a scholarship program for daughters of NGO students who demonstrated academic potential. The goal was to ensure the next generation had access to higher education and could return to the region as qualified professionals committed to local development. The first scholarship recipients were already attending renowned universities in various fields. One of the scholars, Amy Paula, daughter of a student from the 3rd sewing class, graduated in environmental engineering and returned to work on the Foundation's sustainable agriculture projects. Her technical contribution, allowed for the implementation of more efficient irrigation systems and soil conservation practices that increased productivity on participating rural properties. The 25th replica of the NGO was implemented in an indigenous village in Montana, fully respecting local cultural traditions and incorporating ancestral knowledge about crafts and natural medicine. The project economically strengthened the community without distorting its cultural identity, creating a sustainable development model that preserved ethnic diversity. David developed a direct marketing system that connected rural producers in the region with urban consumers interested in organic food. The digital platform eliminated intermediaries and ensured fair prices for family farmers, many of whom were relatives of NGO students. The system became a model for other regions interested in strengthening family farming. The 15th anniversary of the discovery was marked by a special achievement. The foundation received international certification as a center of excellence in rural women's empowerment. The global recognition opened opportunities for partnerships with international organizations and access to funding for development projects on an even larger scale. During the certification ceremony, representatives from the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization visited the foundation to see the results firsthand. They were impressed by the integration between women's empowerment, sustainable rural development, and community strengthening. The visit resulted in an invitation for Emily to participate in an international conference on rural development. Susan, at 83 years old, continued to actively participate in the foundation's activities, despite some natural physical limitations due to age. Her accumulated wisdom was constantly sought by students and mentors facing difficult situations. She had become a kind of official advisor for the organization, offering guidance based on decades of life experience. Susan's story inspired the creation of a specific program for elderly women who wanted to learn new skills or teach traditional knowledge. The project valued the experience of senior citizens while keeping participants active and socially engaged. Many grandmothers found in the program a way to feel useful and respected by the community. Robert turned 15, demonstrating admirable maturity and social commitment. He had developed an environmental education project for local children using knowledge gained through his involvement with the foundation's work. His youth initiative complemented the adult projects and created a bridge between generations committed to social transformation. Robert's environmental education program attracted attention from municipal schools interested in implementing similar activities. He began offering training for teachers and educational coordinators, showing that social leadership can be developed early when there is a supportive family environment and positive role models to follow. Emily, now 60 years old, reflected on how her life had completely transformed after the discovery in the barn. She had gone from a person focused only on personal matters to a recognized leader in social development, from a daughter who felt abandoned by her mother to a partner in a transformative project, from a woman insecure in relationships to a fulfilled wife and mother. Emily's journey had become a subject of study in universities, researching female leadership and social transformation. Her story demonstrated how personal crises can be converted into growth opportunities that benefit entire communities. Her case was cited in academic theses on women's empowerment and community development. David had established himself as a national reference in sustainable agriculture applied to social projects. His methods were adopted by rural development organizations across the country, always adapted to local, regional, and cultural specificities. Professional recognition constantly strengthened his partnership with Emily in managing the family projects. The foundation completed 20 years of activities, having trained more than 3,000 women in different skills, incubated 500 female enterprises, implemented 30 replicas in different regions of the country, and influenced public policies for women's empowerment at state and federal levels. The impressive numbers validated the methodology developed by the family. One of the most significant achievements was having the foundation's methodologies incorporated into government rural development programs. Several techniques developed experimentally in Greendale became official policies applied in hundreds of Brazilian municipalities. The multiplier impact exceeded the founder's most optimistic expectations. Gladys, now 80 years old, remained active in the embroiderers' cooperative that had become the main source of artistic income in the region. Her story of transformation from a helpless widow to a successful business leader constantly inspired new students facing similar difficulties. She had become a living symbol of the foundation's project effectiveness. Mary Grace had become curator of a regional museum of traditional crafts that preserved ancient techniques while encouraging contemporary innovations. Her work ensured ancestral knowledge wouldn't be lost to modernization, creating a bridge between tradition and contemporary times that culturally enriched the entire region. Jennifer assumed the executive directorship of the foundation when Emily decided to dedicate herself more to consulting activities and lectures. The leadership transition was carefully planned to ensure continuity of the original values and methodologies. Jennifer brought renewed energy and updated perspectives that kept the organization relevant for new generations. The 20th anniversary of the discovery was celebrated with a national event that gathered representatives from all NGO replicas, government authorities, academic researchers, and hundreds of women benefited by the projects. The celebration highlighted not only past achievements, but also future plans to further expand the social impact of the methodology. During the celebration, the National Institute for Rural Women's Empowerment was officially launched, an organization that consolidated all the accumulated experience of the foundation and its replicas. The institute would be headquartered in Washington, D.C., with regional branches, allowing it to influence public policies and coordinate development projects on a national scale. Emily Thompson was chosen as the first president of the National Institute, recognizing her leadership and expertise in women's empowerment. The position would allow her to significantly broaden the reach of her work, taking methodologies tested in Greendale to the entire national territory. It was the consolidation of a career entirely dedicated to social development. Susan, at 88 years old, received a special tribute as the inspiring founder of the movement that had transformed thousands of women's lives. Her story of resilience during decades of forced separation had become an inspiring legend for women facing seemingly impossible situations. The official recognition brought historical justice for years of unjust suffering. David was appointed National Coordinator of Sustainable Rural Development for the Institute, a position that would allow him to expand environmentally responsible methodologies to social projects across the country. His technical expertise would be crucial to ensuring that community economic growth did not compromise environmental preservation. Robert, now 20 years old and a social sciences student, was interning at the National Institute, developing specific projects for youth engagement in community development activities. His work built bridges between generations and ensured that young people became interested in social issues from an early age, perpetuating values of civic responsibility. The box found in the barn 20 years earlier gained replicas that were distributed to all Institute branches as a symbol of the transformation possible when painful family truths are converted into strength for social change. Each replica contained letters representing stories of local overcoming, creating a symbolic network of female resistance. The original barn was designated as municipal heritage, recognizing its importance as the birthplace of a social movement that influenced thousands of lives. The space continued to function as a memorial and visitation center, receiving national and international delegations interested in learning about the Institute's origins. The memorial now included a specialized library on women's empowerment and rural development, with a collection of over 5,000 books, academic theses, documentaries, and audiovisual records. The space had become a research center for students and professionals interested in deepening their knowledge of social transformation methodologies. Emily Thompson began writing a second book specifically focused on practical methodologies for rural women's empowerment. The work would be a technical manual based on 20 years of practical experience, offering concrete tools for organizations interested in replicating similar projects. Several academic publishers had expressed interest in the publication. Susan collaborated on the second book by sharing insights on how to maintain hope during prolonged periods of difficulty. Her contribution brought profound existential perspective that complemented technical aspects of the methodology. At 89 years old, she continued to be a source of wisdom for people of all ages. The second book would include detailed case studies of all 30 implemented replications, demonstrating how basic methodologies could be adapted to different cultural, geographical, and socio-economic contexts. The diversity of implementations validated the flexibility and robustness of the fundamental principles developed by the family. The 35th sewing class of the original NGO included granddaughters of students from the first classes, showing that the project had become an intergenerational tradition in the community. Technical knowledge was now being passed from grandmothers to granddaughters through institutional mediation, creating educational continuity that transcended traditional family structures. The mentorship program evolved to include mentors from different regions who communicated virtually with students from other locations. Technology enabled the creation of a national network of mutual support among women who shared similar experiences of overcoming challenges and empowerment, exponentially multiplying the impact of the original methodologies. One of the most touching mentorships connected Susan with a young maroon descendant from Louisiana who had lost her mother early and felt lost about how to build her future. The exchange of experiences between the 89-year-old grandmother and the 18-year-old girl created a generational and cultural bridge that enriched both participants. The National Institute began offering specialization courses in rural women's empowerment for professionals from other social organizations. The courses combined academic theory with supervised practice at regional branches, ensuring comprehensive training for qualified multipliers. Demand far exceeded initial capacity. Emily was invited to join advisory committees of international development organizations, a position that allowed her to influence global women's empowerment policies. Her practical experience in community transformation was valued in contexts where theoretical aspects predominated over applied knowledge. David developed a technical exchange program that allowed family farmers from the region to visit similar projects in other countries, while hosting international professionals interested in learning about American methodologies. The exchange enriched local knowledge and positioned the region as an international reference. Robert completed his undergraduate degree in social sciences with a specialization in community development, preparing to take on leadership responsibilities at the Institute when the appropriate time came. His academic training perfectly complemented the practical education received through family involvement with social projects. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of overcoming and discovery. If you have a family story you'd like to share or have been through similar situations, leave your sincere words in the comments. Do you believe Emily made the right decisions upon discovering the truth about her family? We'd love to read your opinion on how family secrets can be transformed into strength for positive change. Thank you so much for joining us on this exciting journey. Don't forget to leave your like and, most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other inspiring stories of overcoming and transformation.